I just need to address this right away. There will be no tokens, there will be no party zone, but we're hearing this here. But we will be talking about what the Web3 is going on. Before we start doing that though, I just want to introduce myself a little bit. So my name is Piérre Reimertz. I work at a company called HIFI Labs. Very long story short is that we are a bunch of people from the music industry who kind of see that the music industry can probably be kind of changed and improved so that artists get a little bit more value out of it, and maybe they also own a little bit more of their relationships with, you know, their fans and etc. So that's kind of what we're doing, and this is just kind of a little sizzle reel of all the stuff we're doing. But yeah, really happy to be here. I was here 2019 and had a talk about machine learning. That was really nice. But the best thing that happened was someone gave this comment on the YouTube channel, or the YouTube video afterwards. Like, this guy looks like Boris from GoldenEye. And if you played GoldenEye, if you had like a Nintendo 64, this is kind of like the best compliment you can ever get. And I don't know, I let you decide, but it is kind of similar, right? So yeah, but let's leave me behind and let's talk about Web3. So we as a company at HiFi, we started exploring Web3 like last year. And in April, we were kind of like, this is really cool technology. So I was like, I want to talk about this at Nordic.js, and I was super excited about it. But then I started to get very nervous because I also realized that, well, shit, this is a very loaded topic. And I'm going to start talk about Web3 in front of probably a lot of people that maybe thinks it's a scam. I don't know. That's super stressful. So please bear with me and let me introduce one of many robots that we will see today that will help us introduce certain concepts in the Web3 ecosystem. But this is Skeppy, the skeptical robot. And this will be the neutral party in our conversation. I mean, I created the robot, so I don't know how neutral it is, but I tried to make the robot very neutral. So, you know, when Skeppy shows up, it will be tough questions. So what I like to do always when I talk about complicated things, not just for you, but very much so for myself, is to go back in time. And I don't know if you've seen this, but this is the mother of all demos. It was a demo by Douglas Engelbart 50 years ago, where he basically showed like it was the birth of the modern computer. And kind of a lot of technology that we rely on today, he kind of showed, like live video conferencing and like hyperlinks and yeah, a bunch of shit. You see the cursor too? He has a pointer. No one knew what that was at that time, but he just he just owned it and showed a cursor for the first time. And that kind of set the foundation for the World Wide Web that Tim Berners-Lee kind of created. And I mean, this was the most beautiful thing. And I still think this is the most beautiful thing with the web. Like, being a kid, seeing all of this stuff, it felt so creative and so free. And that was the Web 1, we kind of call it now, or we can call it. It's not a very like inspirational like manifestation of Web 1, but please bear with me. So Web 1 was introduced in the early 90s. And back then it was kind of read-only. A server had HTML, and you requested that, and you had a browser that could show you what you requested. And all of this worked because of open protocols. What was really cool that it was kind of like open source by design. So you could kind of just right-click on any type of file that you looked at, HTML file, and you could see the source. It was not just the markdown, you could see the CSS and the JavaScript, and that was kind of how I got to learn JavaScript at the first time, because it was not minified, it was like commented, it was like really beautiful. It was also very decentralized. You had all of these very small, beautiful communities spread all over the world, all over the web, and you kind of found them by hearsay. Sure, you could have used like Alta Vista, or I think it was called like Ask Jeeves back then, but it was kind of shitty, and it was word of mouth that I would argue brought you to these small little communities. But what was also really important was that the value stayed within these small communities, these small little web pages, with the builders and the users on the platform. Sorry. So that was cool. Then Web 2 comes. Looks a little bit cooler, a little bit more hyped. What Web 2 did was, we had read, so we could read websites, but we started to be able to write stuff to the Web 2. And at first, you had like HTML, HTTP requests that then turned into jQuery, and you could do, AJAX calls. It was super cool, and that was actually when I got hooked on web development, because I was like, what the fuck, this is so crazy. Like, I can have a website, someone can go to it, and I can talk with all these servers and create super dynamic experiences. But this is where things also started to get a little bit, in my opinion, bad. We started to have closed source, so like you right-clicked and looked on a file, and you couldn't see anything anymore. Everything is just like scrambled. And to be transparent, the web stuff I do right now too is scrambled, so I'm adding to the problem. But that is a problem, right? It's also, very centralized. So these beautiful, small, little decentralized communities were kind of like harder to find, because you had Google search that everybody obviously goes to because it's easy and you always get the good result. But eventually, you lose the beauty of, I guess, a decentralized web, because you have one entity controlling the access of all information. And then you also have the problem that all of the information that everybody's writing is getting very siloed. So let's say Twitter or Facebook, all of this information, you write there and you have magical, beautiful experiences with people on these platforms. Well, what if you think one of those platforms are starting to do sketchy stuff? Well, it's not like you can take that information with you, really, and utilize it elsewhere. And I mean, it took tens of years for GDPR to kind of work out, and it's still kind of a hassle. And when you get that data out, it's just a representation of how that data was stored in that siloed environment. So you can't really use it elsewhere. And then, yeah, I guess maybe from my perspective, the biggest problem is that you have really big entities, really big platforms that are extracting a lot of value from the system. So you have, users uploading a lot of user-generated content, and the platforms are monetizing this. And so the Web 2 robot is like, what have you done? You got this very beautiful technology, and you started to make everything centralized, closed source, siloed, and you just extracted all the value. Like if the service is free, we as users are the product. And user growth should not be the golden standard. Always put the well-being of your users first, then make a business model that fits. No fit, bad idea. Okay, so now the Skeppy bot that's about to be skeptical about a lot of things is, saying that, don't be so hard on humans. They're pretty smart. They will probably get this. And I think so. I am really hopeful, because there's a lot of, in my opinion, bad stuff, but there's also a lot of really beautiful stuff. So what if we then could combine the best of the early web with the amazing tech of today? So to give you an example of a problem I see every now and then, working with music and artists and fans. Artists, fans, and musicians put their data onto a platform, and then the data stays there. If an artist would want to bring their fans somewhere else, it's really, really, really tough. I mean, you can say that you're moving to a new platform, but like bringing, for example, the bank details with you, no, that platform's own that. But instead, artists, fans, and musicians could, in a magical system, just interact with each other without like a third party controlling the ins and outs of their interactions. So Skeppybot is like, well, there's a lot of things that I think will work in this magical system. Open source, let's do it. Open protocols, community-driven, why not? Read and write, let's do it. But decentralized and centralized, value stays and value gets extracted, well, that's where things get complicated. But that's also where maybe there is a solution. What if the perks of a centralized system is that you can make very strict assumptions of the business logic within your business. So for example, Twitter, like if you have the news feed or the relationships between users, you can make very hard definitions of that. And it's hard to make that, I guess, decentralized because there's no open standard where you can break those, put those relationships. But what if there was a standard and you could start to think about application logic as being decentralized and multiple parties could just interact with it? And then within the system, you could have multiple small communities, kind of like creating their own little environments, and they could have value staying with them, but you could also have value being transferred between the communities because they are all using kind of like a standardized system to interact with each other. So there's like no extra fee, you know, sending this value around this magical system. So Skep is like, is this Web3? This sounds very vague. I would argue, though, this is for me the beauty of Web3. There's so many definitions of what Web3 is, but for me, this is Web3. And to explain it a little bit more, I have 3 friends that will be, you know, the representation of some really cool technologies. It's Ebot, Wally, and Smarty. It's actually Ebot. So at the company I work at, we focus on Ethereum, and that's what I'm going to focus on today, because if I would start talking about other stuff, I would probably start lying. But it's not like I'm saying this is the only solution. There's so much technology out there that you could use. But anyway, Ebot, the Ethereum blockchain, is a blockchain, but also with a computer embedded in it. Ethereum is of now 8,000 distributed nodes. I think it was October 2nd. I checked this number. And what is really cool is that it's not just, you know, the validators or the miners that we have heard about. It can be anyone. Like if I want to have a node to myself just verify the blockchain state, or I just want to add value to the system and be a part of this decentralization movement, I can do that. So I think that's a really important thing to know. What is also important to know is that all of these nodes in the system normalize towards a decentralized global state. So you can think about it as a database that is decentralized, and then everybody kind of try and moves towards a global state. There can be some, you know, merge conflicts every here and then, but they will resolve it. And if they don't, a part of the nodes will kind of, they will have to scramble to get back to the global state. And state changes in the system consists of transactions, and these transactions are bundled together in blocks. That's where we get the blockchain from. And state changes in the system is deterministic and repeatable. So if I would boot up a node, or sorry, an Ethereum node today, with the date set to today at this time, and I would do the same 10 years from now, you should get the same result if you're looking at the same timestamp, which is pretty cool. So within the system, read operations are free, and write operations cost gas. Skep is immediately, what the fuck, gas? You have gas in your system? Well, gas is the unit of the amount of the computational effort required to do write operations. Man, that's a very fancy term, but it's basically how much does it cost to do, it's the unit for how much it costs to do, you know, transactions in the system, basically. Well, Skep is still like, this still sounds very scary. What about the Earth? And I think this is really like important. I feel like we all today probably are kind of like worried, and I'm not going to try and get emotional here, but it is just environmental impacts are kind of a stressful factor. And it is ironic looking at a technology that feels and looks to have so many cool functionalities that could solve so many like real problems, but it's also like connected with this really bad thing, which is the energy consumption. So that was the truth for quite some time. We were relying on proof of work, which is what everybody here think it is. It's you know, GPUs, graphic cards in basements, you know, consuming a lot of energy. And it's pretty bad. But there's also other things called proof of stake. And that is basically, you just throw out the graphic cards, give back the graphic cards to the gamers so we can have cheap graphic cards again. No more miners, you know. And what happens instead is that people put a stake in. That's why it's called proof of stake. So what that means is that rather than using a GPU and solve very hard, tough mathematical problems over and over again. You're just putting in value, and when you're validating transactions in the system, if you turn out to be a scam, you will be penalized, and the money you staked will basically be gone. And I'm really happy to say that Ethereum has been running this system now or this type of validation for 4 weeks, and it's working really great. So I feel like that's, for me at least, really, really awesome, because then I can ignore this really tough problem with blockchain technology, because I think it went down like 99.6% or something like that, so a pretty major going down in energy consumption. So Skepibot is happy. I mean, Earth is also happy. So let's introduce another friend, Wall-E, the wallet. And this is the interface between you and your Ethereum account. Accounts has ETH balance and can send transactions. Accounts can also be 2 types of accounts, either user-controlled or a smart contract, and that we will talk about in a little bit. And wallets lets you interact with your account, and wallet lets your account interact with Ethereum, kind of. And we're going to demo this soon. And I think you all probably know this, but it would feel not okay not to mention this. You should never share your credentials when you're working with Ethereum or any blockchain, because if you do and you lose them, you can be borked in many ways. Like, you just lose access, or if someone else gets a hold of your account credentials, then they can just take all your money. So always be like really careful with that. So yeah, Skepi says this sounds very scary. And it is scary, but I'm going to show you that it's not as scary now as it was like 3-4 years ago, when wallets looked super, like they looked sketchy just using them, but now we have really good UX. So let's have a little demo. Internet is working, cool. So this is something I created very quickly, and it's using something called Rainbow Kit. It's a React component to basically add a wallet connect to your website. And I think what is really beautiful is that, I don't know if you can see this, but yeah, 3-4 years ago, you would not have this introduction, what is a wallet? But now new users can learn about what it is, and they can also get help, get a wallet. And if you use, it's not like I'm trying to sell Rainbow here, but they are really good and also educating you how to protect your credentials on your phone when you have the app. So, and it's also open source, which adds a lot of value to it. But let me connect here real quick. So I'm gonna do this, and we're gonna close that, and I am gonna do. I did not prepare my phone, but nothing sketchy showed up, so that was good. And there we are, we're connected now. I mean, I wish there were more magical stuff happening, but it's a kind of like a demo, so it's not. Here we can see the latest block number just increasing, which I think is pretty cool. It's a React component that just gets that update in real time. We're using like React hooks, a React hook library called WagMe, which makes it very easy to interact with like Ethereum and user accounts kind of in a React hook kind of way. But let us also maybe donate some money to Ukraine, their efforts. So what I'll do now is I just click this button. I can open my wallet, and just like Swish or Bank ID, like since the connection has been made, I get the verifications within my app without, like, there's some magic happening obviously, but it's kind of magical that it works. And now I can just press confirm. And will it recognize me? Yes, it does. And then we got a transaction hash back. So now we can go to something called Etherscan. And Etherscan is basically the place you go when you just want to explore things happening on Ethereum. So now we can see that I sent this transaction, it's still pending because we just did it. But it's quite magical how quick this actually usually is. Now obviously I will have, Ethereum will be slow today. When I'm standing here on the stage, there's probably some like Bitcoin hacker somewhere just ruining stuff. No, I'm just kidding. But so here we can see now we have 2 block confirmations, status, success. So I just want to really quickly point out what this means. So 2 block confirmation means that since my transaction has been added to the system, 2 more blocks have been minted. And this is a number that's used kind of as a trust factor in knowing how likely it is that your transaction has happened. And I think people usually rely on 12 confirmations, and after that you are kind of, okay, now it has happened. You can kind of assume that the transaction went through. But yeah, so now, yeah, we donated that, and we can go back, and I think that was kind of it for the interaction with the wallet. How does this code look like? So this is kind of like pseudocode. There's a lot of things going on here. It looks way more scary than it is, but it's actually just 2 things working in tandem. And if you're used to React and the provider and consumer kind of context, or what do you call it, architecture thing, this is not probably that uncommon for you. So what we've created here, we're pulling in Rainbow Kit as a provider. We're getting some default wallets. That was basically what you saw when we connected. There was a bunch of wallets on the left side. That's basically what you get from getting the default wallets. Then we're getting some configuration stuff from WogMe to set up the React hooks. And then we're basically just combining these together. And then eventually what you can do, if you wrap your React app with this, is that you can just magically start doing stuff like this. So you have a use block number hook. You just pull that in, you get the data, and you can say that you also want this data to be watch true, which means that it will update by itself. And I mean, the block number maybe is not super magical, but it's still something that's really cool. And you could see that it was like ticking in real time. So you could see the system working as we go. You could also see us do like the transaction, like we had the donate to Ukraine. And this is where things become a little bit more complicated. You see we have a use send transaction on line number 1, but then we also have use prepare send transaction. What is that? Well, this is also one of the pitfalls of web3 UX. Like you can do transaction with Ethereum that will fail. Whatever you do, it will fail. So you can build UI, people pay a lot of stuff, and they think something will happen, and then it just gets rejected, but you paid to, at least the user paid to try and do the action that failed. So what use prepare send transaction is basically kind of trying to do transaction without actually doing it. So it's testing if it will actually work if you are trying to do it. So that's why you are setting it up like this. You're fake running the transaction once, and if that works, then you use a configuration you get back from that to create the actual transaction. And this saves users a lot of money and should probably be used everywhere. Okay. 6 minutes, Smarty the contract. I think we can do this. I need to be really quick though. Okay, so Smarty is the smart contract, and this is where things becomes magical, and this is where Ethereum is different from, for example, Bitcoin, because we can start putting code onto Ethereum that then users externally can interact with. Smart contracts is written in a language called Solidity. It is quite complicated, so if you're good at it, you get really well paid. And when you compile it, it compiles the bytecode, and then you deploy it to Ethereum. Since it's so complicated, it's also very standardized. And just like NPM, you have a bunch of building blocks that you can pull in that are very vetted, so you can trust that they will actually not, make your contract get hacked later, which is really, really, really cool. I mean, they are also used to create NFTs, and we are kind of going to create an NFT later. And the reason why I wanted to, do that is because I feel like NFTs get this kind of like, oh, we both kind of maybe not like it that much, but it also sounds like this magical thing, whereas from my perspective, it is not that magical. So I want to just demo that real quick. And then also smart contracts are immutable. So once you've written them to Ethereum, the blockchain, they will stay there forever. I'm doing it like a little star here. That's because you can do things to get around that problem, but I'm not going to talk about that now because it's super complicated. And people kind of look down upon doing these hacks to make smart contracts non-immutable, if that makes sense. So yeah, bear with me. Next year I will talk about that maybe. Okay, so demo time. Now I need to hurry. So this is going to be a lot of fun. So we open Firefox here now. We are going to have a YOLO club, and this is how we're going to demo the smart contract. We're going to use something called remix.ethereum.org. This is really cool. This is like building Solidity contracts in the browser, and you could use this to deploy from the browser. If you work with Solidity for real, though, you should probably not use this, I would argue, but it is a very decent tool. But if we look here, this is the smart contract that we're going to try and deploy right now to the mainnet using my wallet. So there's so many things that can go wrong here, but let's see what happens. So we are compiling this smart contract right now, and I should walk through what it does actually really quick too. So you see here we have a mapping address to ball, and it says club members. So you can think about this as an array with a bunch of addresses in it, and each address will have a true or false boolean. That's what it is. And then we have a public string that's called club message that says YOLO club is live. And you have two functions, join club, and then also update club message. And you can't join the club if you're already a member of it, and you cannot update the club message if you're not a club member. So let's compile this. It is good. Let's do this. A lot of things happening right now, but now I'm in Firefox, and I'm going to use another wallet. I'm still connected to the same account, but I'm going to use my MetaMask wallet thing instead. I'm going to press deploy here. I just hope this is good. And we get here now. Okay, so this is where things become funny, right? You look at the code. It's 20 lines of code, and this is going to cost me like $8. Welcome to Ethereum. So now we have deployed the smart contract. We can see that it's pending. And hopefully this will go really quick because we have not that much time left. I don't know if it works if I dance. There we go. Cool. Okay. So this is the contract now that got created. So let's copy paste this address, and we're going to go into code land. And this is going to go so quick so you don't going to understand what's happening. But here we're just updating contract address. And then I'm going to go back and look in remix. And then if we go here to the bottom where we compiled, you see something saying ABI. This is basically you entered this, and this is basically the, how should I explain this? This is an interface for interacting with the compiled contract that you just created. So this basically, you know, because it's just binary code, and for you to be able to interact with it, you need this definition of how this binary code is structured and what type of inputs and outputs you have and what type of, you know, if it's a string or whatever. But now we've done that. We have updated our contract thing here, and if I now reload this website and I press connect wallet, hopefully things will work. Let's see here. Boop, 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 boop. And yeah, you don't need to see me connect again with my phone. You know that it works now. There we go. So now we see, okay, we're connected. There's some visual bugs here. I don't know why, but it's a feature. So now we joined the club. What actually happened now is I called that smart contract function that I just created. So if I open my wallet here right now, it will ask me, do you want to do this? And we can see that it costs $0.33 to join this club. Let's do it. And we're joining it. And again, we will get a transaction. We can go in and we can see how does this transaction do. And it will be pending, but eventually what will happen is that I will be added onto that list within that smart contract. So now I am forever on Ethereum mainnet, a part of the YOLO club. It says fail. I am not. Oh, that's so ironic. Why did it fail? Encoder during, okay, so out of gas. That's interesting. Well, I guess we would just need them to trust me and say that it would work. And what would have happened then? Actually, that's shit. Let me. Oh, I'm over 2. Okay, let me just show. So when you do a transaction, you can also say, this is important, I need to do this now. So I'm gonna just say, do this now. I pay a little bit extra. Hopefully it will go through, and we can try and write a message here. Hello, YOLO. The message was something like, let me see here. Oh, I think the reason why is because there's a problem in, we don't get the actual contract information in here. So that means that the integration is actually not working. So that's a bummer. I could do this and go back and have like a demo contract, and this is how it would look like. But then it's not on the mainnet, and it kind of feels fake. But I guess it's okay for this time. So this is how it would look like. It would have been magical. I would have been a club member on the mainnet, but right now I'm not, and I feel it feels awful. But anyway, this was like the quickest. There were so many slides. I just got to tell you really quick. There were so many slides I had to remove because there's so much I wanted to tell you, and I also wanted to be kind of like playful. So what I will be doing is I will try and tweet a little bit to give a more insight and maybe point you to not just Ethereum stuff. So this is not a cheap way of like, follow me. Please don't follow me, but or please follow me, I guess. But just go to my Twitter and check, and I will, maybe tomorrow, I will start tweeting about some other things you can look at, and that will give you a little bit more details. And I hope at least after this presentation that you're at least be skeptical, but maybe you at least want to try it out. And if that's the case, I'm super happy. Thank you all.